Hey guys, tonight we're setting sail on a myth that begins quietly, with a stranger and a ship, and ends somewhere between a vineyard and a dolphin sanctuary. You're walking along a beach, barefoot, of course, because that's the only footwear the gods respect, and you spot a young man just sitting. Not distressed, not in a hurry, just there, smiling at the sea like he owns it. Which, to be fair, he might. He's wearing a cloak, a little too fine for a normal traveler. And he has that suspiciously flawless hair that either means he's a god or he has a 10-step olive oil regimen. You notice he's humming. You don't recognize the melody, but it makes you feel like dancing and sleeping at the same time. You probably won't survive this cruise. But that's okay, you weren't planning to anyway. You're here to relax, remember? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Always fun to see how far this little bedtime boat floats. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The man glances up as you approach, like he's been expecting you. There's a kindness in his face, but something about it flickers, like light on wine or fire on water. You sit near him, not too close, and he says, without looking, "Do you want to see something funny?" This is not how normal conversations start. But then again, you're not entirely sure this is a normal beach. There's a ship in the distance, a small trading vessel. Not particularly impressive. The man doesn't seem to notice it, but he's clearly watching. His fingers tap out a bead on his knee. You follow his gaze and realize the ship is changing course. It's headed straight toward shore. Now, if you were any other mythological mortal, this might be your cue to prepare for battle or a sudden marriage proposal from a swan. But instead, you just stretch out on the sand. The man chuckles. Good choice, he says. Here's a mainstream historical fact to chew on while we wait. The ancient Greeks were obsessed with omens at sea. Birds, waves, dreams. They read everything like it came with subtitles from the gods. Pirates, however, less poetic. Mostly just opportunistic guys with boats and poor life choices. And this ship? Absolutely pirate material. As it docks, a gang of sunburned, salty men stumbles out. They spot the man, our cheerful stranger, and their eyes light up like kids spotting unattended cake. You're not sure what kind of criminal enterprise this is, but it's clearly not going to end in tax forms. Look at, I am. One of them mutters. Betty's rich. He's not even armed. Another snorts. I dibs the cloak, says a third. You glance at the man beside you. He winks. Historians still argue whether the pirates in this myth are based on a real ethnic group, Tyrrhenians from central Italy, or whether Tyrrhenian was just Greek shorthand for nautical buffoons. What's agreed on is that these weren't your elite Mycenaean warriors. These were the guys who showed up late to history class and copied off of Odysseus. The pirates approach. You're expecting a confrontation, maybe a sword drawn, or at least a monologue. But no, they just nod at you politely. And one of them says, "Excuse us, just borrowing the boy." You consider stopping them, briefly, but then you remember your job tonight is to relax, not to interfere with divine retribution. So you watch as they lead him aboard. Still smiling, still barefoot, the man doesn't resist. In fact, he thanks them for the ride. Classic Dionysus. You don't know his name yet. Not really. But something in your bones is beginning to suspect you've just witnessed the opening scene of a very slow, very weird divine prank. And now the wind's picking up. There's an odd calm on the beach. You lie back again, eyes half closed, listening to the waves slap against the hull of the now departing ship. The pirates laugh and jostle each other. One of them says, "We'll ransom him to someone fancy. Or keep him, he can pour wine." The ship pulls away. From your angle, the sun glints off the waves in a way that makes it hard to tell what's sky and what's sea. It's all beginning to shimmer. You hear faint music, just a few notes, teasing the edge of hearing. The man is on board now, surrounded by thieves, and yet somehow he looks more at home than they do. You're not worried. You're too tired to be worried. And besides, you've read enough myths to know when a barefoot stranger smiles too much and lets himself be kidnapped, he's not the one in trouble. The ship creaks as it slides away from shore, the sail puffing softly in the breeze. The crew is already congratulating themselves, which is always the first mistake. You can't hear the exact words from your cozy spot on the sand. But the body language is unmistakable, back pats, exaggerated gestures, one guy doing a sort of victory dance with a jug of oil. The air of triumph is so thick you could spread it on barley bread. And standing in the middle of it all is our barefoot mystery man. Looking delighted to be here. Still no signs of fear. No questions like, "Where are we going?" Or, "Why are you pointing a rusty dagger at me?" Just that infuriating, unbothered smile. The captain, let's call him Eustios, because he looks like a Eustios, steps forward. He pokes the man with the hilt of his sword. "You're awful quiet," he says. "I prefer to let others speak first." The man replies, "It's polite." That answer throws them more than it should. Eustios exchanges a look with the helmsman, a wiry fellow named Achios who's been squinting at their guest since they set sail. Achios isn't convinced. He scratches his chin and mutters, "Shouldn't we ask where he's from? Does it matter?" Eustios replies, rolling his eyes. He's dressed like he eats olives one at a time. That means gold. Now here's your historical tidbit. In the ancient Mediterranean, being well dressed didn't just mean status. It meant danger. Nice tunic? You might be royalty. You also might be a spy, a rival's son, or worse, a wandering oracle with very strong opinions about goat entrails. Kidnapping people was risky business. Even pirates had to worry about revenge gods. But Eustios isn't the kind of man who reads omens. He sees a calm young man with expensive fabric and assumes fate is on his side. They try to tie him up. Now this is where things start to slip. Literally. One of the crew brings out a coil of rough rope, standard pirate issue. They approach slowly, like they're catching a wild chicken, and begin looping the rope around the man's wrists. And the rope? It just doesn't work. No matter how tightly they pull, it slips free. One end comes undone as soon as the other is knotted. They wrap it again. The knot slides apart. Again, the rope goes slack. The man watches, amused, like he's watching toddlers attempt calculus. One pirate swears he saw the rope unwind itself while no one was touching it. "I think it's the sea air." One mutters, "Bad rope. It's the same rope we used on that Corinthian banker last week." Another says, now visibly sweating. At this point, Achios steps in. He crosses his arms and says, "We shouldn't have taken him." The crew ignores him. They always ignore the guy who does his job properly. Historians still argue whether this part of the myth was a metaphor, maybe a symbolic, "you can't bind divinity" statement, or just an excuse for how bad ancient knots really were. It's worth noting the Greeks had dozens of documented knots, but they also had a habit of losing track of which ones actually worked on people and not just oxen. The pirates, meanwhile, are trying everything. They've now moved on to Plan B, stacking amphorae in front of the cabin door to trap their guest inside. He's not even trying to leave. Achios says, "Exactly." Eustios grunts. "That's what's scary." On deck, the crew begins to whisper. Superstition spreads faster than spilled wine. Someone's talking about how the man's shadow doesn't quite match the sun. Another swears they saw ivy growing along the railings, though no one brought plants aboard. You're still watching from the shore, half dozing now, lulled by the rhythm of the waves and the low hum of confusion drifting from the ship. Out there, something is shifting, not a storm, something weirder. Let's talk about Dionysus, without calling him that just yet. His mythology is always slippery. He's not like Zeus, who throws lightning and gets people pregnant at inopportune moments. Or Ares, who just punches his problems. No, this one works with illusions, mood swings, and strangely poetic justice. His powers aren't about domination. They're about surrender, confusion, ecstasy. And on this ship full of small-time crooks and mismatched sandals, he's about to put on a show. Back on the deck, one of the pirates suddenly sneezes violently. Not just once, like 6 times in a row. Everyone gives him space. It's the salt. He croaks. But then another crew member rubs his eyes. "Why's it smell like wine out here?" Wine? And sure enough, there's a scent wafting through the air now. Rich, fruity, grapes that never knew poverty. The kind of aroma that makes you imagine feasts. Liars, reclining on silk cushions while someone feeds you figs. That is not normal for a boat that smells mostly like fish oil and regret. Eustios shouts for everyone to get back to work. He's trying to freak us out. It's just herbs or something. Achios grips the tiller a little tighter. Captain, the ropes won't stay tied. The deck smells like a tavern. And the sails, they're sticky. What do you mean, sticky? I mean they're covered in vines. Everyone turns. And sure enough, ivy is curling up the mast. Slow at first, but you can see it growing, wrapping, stretching. Little green tendrils spiraling toward the sky like they've got somewhere to be. Grape clusters dangle from places where only rigging should be. The ship, in short, is turning into a vineyard. The pirates are starting to panic. But it's the kind of panic where they pretend they're not. Just plant magic. One mutters, maybe he's a druid. That's a thing, right? No. Achios replies, it's really not. You can almost hear the man laugh. It's not cruel. It's just delighted, like he's been waiting for them to notice how much trouble they're in. You, on the shore, roll onto your side, the sand soft beneath you. You've watched enough to know what's coming next. And it's going to get weirder before it gets wonderful. So now the ship smells like a vineyard. The mast is being slowly strangled by grapevines. And half the crew is pretending it's not happening. One pirate takes a grape and eats it. That's his contribution to the situation. He chews, nods, and says, not bad. Achios, ever the underappreciated realist, leans hard on the tiller and mutters something that sounds suspiciously like a prayer, but not to the god currently on board. Meanwhile, the barefoot man, still tied with ropes that continue to fall off like shrugged scarves, has sat down on a coil of rope and is now casually examining a grape cluster like it's a menu. I didn't expect you to be so dramatic, he says to no one in particular, probably addressing the ship itself. But I do appreciate commitment to the bit. The rest of the crew, having finally realized something is deeply wrong, does what all ancient sailors did in times of confusion. They argue. Loudly, passionately, with wild gesturing. This is magic. No, it's gas from the hold. He cursed us. No, he blessed us. Look at the ivy. You can hear it from shore. Though the words are more like distant echoes now. A gentle breeze carries them over the waves, blending with the rising sound of something else, music. Not loud, not harsh, but unmistakably, there. A flute, maybe two. The notes drift like smoke, spiraling above the deck. No one's playing them. The instruments aren't visible, but the melody is clear, haunting, playful, and deeply out of place. It's the kind of tune you'd expect to hear in a grove, with nymphs and maybe a talking tree or two. Not on a creaking pirate ship surrounded by sweaty men with questionable dental hygiene. The crew freezes. That's not normal. Someone whispers, no ship makes music. And then, just to confirm that normality has left the building, a tiger walks out from behind a barrel. Yes, a tiger. Orange and stripy and casual as a house cat. It stretches, yawns, and pads silently across the deck, tail flicking lazily behind it. There's a moment of collective stillness, the kind where everyone questions all their life choices at once. Because let's be honest, in ancient Greece, nobody had tigers. Tigers were the kind of thing you read about in distant travelogues. Along with cinnamon trees and people with dog heads, tigers didn't just show up on boats. Unless, of course, someone invited them. That someone, of course, is still seated comfortably. Now feeding grapes to the tiger like this is a very relaxed brunch date. You, still lying on the beach, can't help smiling. This is the kind of myth where the punchline has claws. Let's take a historical breather here. Tigers are not native to Greece. They were known from stories and possibly from exotic animal trade via Persia and India. Alexander the Great reportedly encountered them later, during his campaigns. So for the average Greek, a tiger was a symbol of the wild, the foreign, and the uncontrollable, which makes it a perfect companion for the god of wine and madness. Historians still debate whether the appearance of the tiger in Dionysus's myths is meant to reflect Eastern influence, or whether it's just ancient fan fiction gone delightfully off the rails. Back on the ship, the pirates do what any of us would do. They panic. But they do it in stages. First, there's denial. It's a hallucination. Don't look at it. Then bargaining. Maybe we can feed it fish. Maybe it just wants fish. Then screaming. Just lots of screaming. The tiger, to its credit, does not maul anyone. It simply curls up at the man's feet like a very judgmental golden retriever. And as if that weren't enough, now the sails begin to change. They shimmer, Ivy and grapevines continue to spread, not just along the mast but down the ropes, across the railings, and into the very grain of the wood. The air is thick with the scent of crushed fruit. The deck is sticky. The sky seems to pulse with warm, lazy light, impossible for this hour. This place, this reality. One pirate begins to sing. Not well, and not in a language anyone recognizes. Another collapses in a fit of giggles, then immediately starts weeping, and the barefoot man, who has said almost nothing, stands up. He lifts his arms just slightly, and the flute music swells. You feel it, even from the shore. It's like the air has been dipped in wine, like the horizon is tipsy, like you're falling asleep while dancing, or dreaming that you're swimming in honey. Warm, strange, comfortable in a way that shouldn't be comfortable. The man walks slowly across the deck, now fully reclaimed by nature. The pirates fall back. Even the bravest ones, the ones who've stabbed people over bread, won't meet his gaze. Because it's not just a man anymore. His face shimmers. His hair moves as if underwater. His body hums, not with sound but with presence. One pirate whispers, "Who is he?" But the answer is already here. You just didn't want to admit it. Here's a fringe detail for you. In some versions of this myth, the god doesn't transform at all. The pirates simply realize who he is. And that alone is enough to cause the unraveling. No bolts of lightning, no fireballs, just a vibe so powerful it rewrites reality. Which, let's face it, is even scarier. You roll onto your back, letting the sounds of the sea and the distant flutes wash over you. Back on the ship, the man, let's start calling him Dionysus now, since everyone else will soon, looks up at the sky and smiles. The tiger yawns, and the ship begins to tremble. Not violently, not with storm or thunder, but like a deep breath is being taken beneath the water. Because the sea is listening now, and it's about to respond. The ship sways, not just with the rhythm of the waves, but with something deeper, a slow pulse, like the sea is exhaling beneath the hull. The pirates freeze mid-panic. A few drop whatever they're holding. One drops to his knees, possibly trying to pray, possibly just very ready to give up on everything, including standing. Someone shouts, "We've angered Poseidon." Dionysus turns slightly at that. "Oh, I wouldn't worry about him. He doesn't like boats. Anyway." You smile from your patch of warm sand, your head resting on your arm. The sun's getting lower now, but everything feels strangely golden, like time's chosen to nap with you. Back on deck, the transformation continues. The ropes twist into vines. The sails shimmer with a silken sheen. No longer canvas but something more organic. The ship is turning into a floating garden. Leaves curl in the corners. Grapes hang from lantern hooks. There's even a soft hum in the air. The sound of a distant lyre. As if the very wood of the hull remembers music. Achios, still gripping the tiller, looks down and realizes his hands are sticky with sap. He lets go. And that's when the first pirate jumps. No one pushes him. No one tells him to go. He just screams, flails, and leaps off the side, feet flailing, arms pinwheeling, landing in the water with a splash that echoes like a punctuation mark. Everyone rushes to the rail. They expect a head to surface. Maybe sputtering, maybe swimming, but instead, there's a flick of a tail. Sleek, silvery, arcing through the waves like it was always meant to be there. The pirate has vanished. In his place, a dolphin. A beautiful one, too. Shiny, playful, possibly confused. It does a quick circle and lets out a sound that's halfway between a squeak and a laugh. You sit up slightly. There it is. You murmur to yourself. The twist. A second pirate backs away from the rail, muttering, "Nope, nope, not happening." Then he slips, right on a cluster of grapes. Overboard he goes. Another splash. Another dolphin. This one bumps the side of the boat like it's asking to come back on. Realizes it can't climb ladders. Then chirps and swims off into the blue. Let's pause for a mainstream fact here. Dolphins were seen by the ancient Greeks as sacred. Symbols of protection, guidance, even joy. There are stories of dolphins saving shipwrecked sailors, guiding lost ships to harbor, and singing sweet dolphin ballads across the ocean. Okay, that one's speculative, but turning people into dolphins? That's peak Dionysus. Historians still debate what this part of the myth is really about. Was it a punishment? A mercy? A poetic way to erase foolishness from the human world and release it into the sea? No consensus. But the story stuck. And the dolphins, apparently, stayed. Now back to the chaos. One by one, the pirates begin to lose it. Get off the boat. Abandoned ship. We're cursed. They leap like frogs. Dive like seals. Scramble over railings like schoolchildren on fire. And with each splash, a dolphin emerges. Elegant, energetic, slightly panicked. You, from the shore, watch the sea fill with spinning fins and joyful little arcs of gray flesh. It's actually kind of cute. The only ones who haven't moved are Achios and Dionysus. Achios isn't a fool. He's figured it out. He's seen the signs. He was the first to speak up. And he's the only one still standing on the deck, gripping the carved rail now blooming with little purple flowers. He turns slowly. You're a god, aren't you? Dionysus smiles. Not a smirk, not mockery, just warmth. I gave you a chance to be better. I told them not to take you. And that's why you're still here. Achios doesn't move. He looks around at the empty ship, now festooned with vines and echoing with the cheerful clicks of dolphins splashing alongside. He shakes his head. What happens now? You could take us to Naxos. Dionysus says softly, almost like a suggestion. It's lovely this time of year. That right there is the calmest divine command in all mythology. Take me to a sunny island. No curses, no thunderbolts, just a polite request. And that's what Achios does. He turns the tiller, now draped in ivy, and sets a course for the distant blue hills of Naxos. You can see them now, far off on the horizon, like a watercolor, misty and impossible. The dolphins dance around the ship as if escorting it, or maybe celebrating their new lease on life. And Dionysus? He sits back down, crosses his legs, plucks a grape, pops it in his mouth. Lovely vintage, he says, licking his fingers. You stretch out once more on your patch of beach. The sand is cooling now, the sky deepening to lavender. The music has faded to a hum, but the story still shimmers in the air. Here's a quirky tidbit. In some lesser-known versions of the myth, the pirates don't turn into dolphins. They turn into sea foam, or tuna, or, strangely, otters. Scholars have all but dismissed those variants, but they linger in obscure texts like forgotten footnotes. Which proves, if nothing else, that mythology is less about facts and more about flavors. You watch the ship shrink into the distance, a garden drifting through the twilight sea, guided by a helmsman who knew better and a god who just wanted a lift. The dolphins leap, the waves settle, and the air smells faintly of wine. The dolphins, now a pod of former pirates, spiral and play in the ship's wake like nothing ever happened. They leap in pairs, chase each other in tight arcs, and, every so often, click or squeak as if laughing at some divine joke you'll never quite understand. It's peaceful, which is not how ship mutinies usually end. From the shore, you stretch your limbs, roll onto your back, and watch the sky deepen. The sun is melting into the sea in slow, sleepy motion, dragging lazy brushstrokes of pink and copper behind it. You don't really feel your body anymore. Just the sand under your shoulder blades, the breeze on your cheeks, and the soft sound of water lapping at the beach. Back on the ship, the garden continues to grow. Leaves twirl around the rigging. Grape clusters droop from the mast like sleepy lanterns. Even the wheel looks like it's sprouted soft moss, though Achios is still steering with calm dignity, as if this is just how boats are now. Dionysus lounges at the stern, completely unbothered, arms behind his head, legs stretched across a bench like he invented naps. He probably did. The flutes pick up again, still no visible musicians, and a second layer of music joins in, soft drums. Like distant footsteps on hollow wood. Not threatening, more like a heartbeat. Now here's something historians love to argue about. Was this whole myth invented just to explain why dolphins like humans? Some scholars say yes, it's a moral tale dressed up in togas. Others argue it's a classic Dionysian prank, a narrative wine buzz that spirals into divine chaos. And a third group, the fringe crowd, thinks it's a coded story about letting go of identity and returning to nature. To which the average listener says, but the dolphin part's still the best, right? Yes, it is. Anyway, back on board, Dionysus finally speaks again. I like this boat better now. Achios doesn't answer. He's focused on the sea ahead, but you can tell he's listening. I think you'll like Naxos. The god continues. They do good theater. Lots of singing, little too much crying, but that's part of the charm. Achios nods slowly, as though being briefed by a very powerful cruise director. I once turned a king into a snake, Dionysus says, almost to himself. Did he deserve it? Achios asks. Oh, very much. You blink slowly from your shoreline cocoon. Did he say snake? You're not sure whether you imagined it. It's the kind of detail that flits through these stories like a dream, real while it's happening. Confusing in the morning. Let's touch on the tiger again. Shall we? Because it hasn't moved. Still curled up next to Dionysus. Tail flicking occasionally. Eyes half-lidded. Occasionally it lets out a slow breath that sounds suspiciously like a snore. It hasn't eaten anyone. Hasn't even stretched. It's just there, like a divine bodyguard, or maybe just a statement piece. In myth, Dionysus is often shown riding in a chariot pulled by panthers or tigers. This is not subtle symbolism. He is a god of wildness, of things that don't belong in cages, of unpredictable instincts wrapped in golden robes. The tiger, in this case, is both companion and warning label. People always assume I'm the soft one, Dionysus murmurs, feeding the tiger a grape. The tiger does not protest. You drink a little wine, hand out some flowers, and suddenly everyone thinks you won't turn them into aquatic mammals. Achios glances over. Would you have turned me into one? No, the god says. But only because you didn't try to tie me up with budget rope and poor intentions. You chuckle at that. The idea of divine punishment being based not on evil, but on vibe, very on brand. By now, the ship is drifting toward Naxos, visible as a faint smudge on the horizon. The sun's almost gone, and the first stars peek timidly into view. You try counting them, but lose track after 3 because your brain is already half melted into sleep mode. Here's another historical morsel for you. Naxos, in real life, was a center of Dionysian worship. It had temples, rituals, and wild festivals dedicated to the god of wine and drama. People danced, wore masks, shouted poems at trees, sometimes for days. It was, depending on who you asked, either a spiritual awakening or a great excuse to call in sick for a week. And it's also where, according to myth, Dionysus found love. But that's a story for another time. Tonight, we're just passengers. The dolphins have started slowing, matching the pace of the boat. Some swim in circles. One flips lazily in the air before vanishing into a splash of silver. Dionysus, meanwhile, has gone silent. His eyes are closed, but he's smiling. The tiger sighs. And then something strange happens, quietly. The vines begin to retreat. Not all at once, not with drama, just a slow curling back, like a time-lapse in reverse. The mast sheds its leaves. The rails clear. The sails lose their shimmer and return to worn cloth. Even the sticky grape scent begins to fade into ordinary sea salt. It's like the ship is sobering up. Achios watches with silent awe. No questions, just quiet understanding. Dionysus opens one eye. Can't leave it like that, he says, makes port inspection awkward. And just like that, the divine spell unravels, not out of punishment, but practicality. You breathe in deep. The air is cool now. Stars reflected in the water like spilled pearls. And behind your closed eyes, you still hear flutes. The ship, now rid of its botanical makeover, glides over the water like nothing unusual ever happened. To a passing sailor, it would look completely ordinary, just a tired vessel on its way to a sleepy island. But you and Achios both know better. The wood still smells faintly of crushed fruit, and there's a tiger snoozing at the stern, which tends to give things away. Dionysus is reclined now, fingers laced behind his head, eyes half-lidded as he watches the stars emerge. The sea is smooth. Even the dolphins have settled, swimming alongside with the unhurried grace of creatures that know exactly where they're going, even if the people on the boat do not. Achios shifts at the helm, careful not to disturb the serenity, but unable to resist asking, "So, dolphins?" Dionysus smiles without looking at him. "You don't approve?" "Just curious. Why dolphins and not, say, fish, or sea cucumbers?" The god hums thoughtfully. "Because dolphins are joyful, graceful, they're clever, social, funny in a way humans can understand. A fitting reward for idiots with potential." Achios considers that. "So, you spared them?" "I transformed them." Let's press pause here and wade into a historical debate. Ancient sources differ wildly on whether this transformation was punishment, elevation, or something more symbolic. Some Roman poets called it poetic justice. Others suggested Dionysus was offering redemption, an escape from human failings into something freer, wilder, more innocent. Historians still argue whether the myth was meant to inspire reverence, laughter, or an urge to avoid sea travel entirely. And dolphins? Oh, the Greeks loved them. They were seen as messengers, friends of Apollo, guides of souls, and general marine good guys. If you had to get turned into an animal, dolphin was a strong option. Beats getting turned into a spider for weaving too well. Anyway, back on the ship, Achios leans against the railing, looking down into the dark water. A dolphin surfaces nearby, blinking up at him with an almost human look. It clicks once, then disappears again beneath the glassy surface. They remember? He asks. Dionysus sits up, brushing invisible crumbs off his tunic. Of course, memory makes it interesting. Achios turns. So they know they were people? The god shrugs. Only when they dream. The ship creaks, sails snapping softly in the breeze. The stars overhead are sharp and endless now. The kind of sky that makes you feel very small. In a pleasant, floaty sort of way. You sink deeper into the sand, arms folded behind your head, body warm and heavy with calm. The shoreline is quiet except for the gentle lap of waves and the occasional chirp of something that may or may not be a cricket with dreams of being a bird. Dionysus walks slowly to the bow of the ship, where the figurehead, a battered wooden lion, seems to watch the sea with a weary expression. He places a hand on it and whispers something. You don't hear the words, but you get the sense it's a thank you, or maybe an apology. Gods can be surprisingly sentimental when no one's watching. Then, turning back, he says to Achios, "Do you know the story of the ship of Theseus?" Achios raises an eyebrow. The one with the puzzle? Replace every part of a ship, piece by piece, and ask if it's still the same ship? Dionysus grins. Exactly. But what if the ship replaces you, piece by piece, until you're something else entirely? Achios gives a slow, tired chuckle. Then I'd be the world's first philosophical rowboat. I'd sail you. Dionysus replies, completely serious. And that, more than anything, is what makes Dionysus different. He's the god of wine and madness. Sure, but also the god of masks, of changing states, liquid to vapor, man to dolphin, seriousness to laughter. He doesn't demand worship. He just invites you to loosen your grip a little. Speaking of which, here's a quirky detail you won't find on most travel brochures. In some lesser-known versions of the myth, the dolphins remain devoted to Dionysus. They gather around his ships, sing strange songs at night, and carry whispered messages across the Aegean. One obscure fragment even claims they rescued a child once. Some lost prince fated for greatness, and delivered him safely to shore. Now, whether that's true or just an ancient bedtime story to help kids sleep near noisy harbors, who's to say? You shift slightly in the sand, half dreaming now. The sky has gone full velvet. The moon, round and silver, casts a lazy shimmer across the sea. And the ship, now a calm silhouette on the water, sails ever closer to Naxos. Dionysus leans over the side, watching the dolphins, his expression unreadable. Do they ever come back? Achios asks suddenly. Who? The god replies, not looking away. The men, the pirates. Dionysus is quiet for a moment. Then, only if they want to. Most don't. It's better out there. Simpler. Achios nods. He seems to understand. You're not entirely sure you do, but then again, you're not the one driving a boat for a barefoot vineyard wizard with a tiger and a dolphin entourage. The god stretches. You'll know when to stop. I'd trust you. And just like that, he lies down again, draping his cloak around him like a blanket. The tiger curling close. Achios, now the de facto captain of this floating fever dream, says nothing. The dolphins swim on, steady and sure. And you, there on the shore, exhale into the quiet. Your thoughts float somewhere between stars and salt and laughter. The story isn't over yet. But the sea is very, very calm. You barely notice when your eyes close for a moment. The hush of the sea, the soft breath of night air, and the rhythmic slap of water against sand have folded over you like a blanket. But the story pulls gently at the edge of your awareness, keeping you tethered, half asleep, half awake. and wholly adrift in myth. Out on the ship, something shifts. It's not the wind or the waves, it's the feeling. Like a curtain being drawn open. Like a memory stepping forward after years of silence. The sea glows faintly now. Not with moonlight, but with something subtler. Bioluminescent plankton? Perhaps. Or maybe it's just the magic in the water. Stirred up by dolphins who remember being men. And a god who likes to keep things interesting. The ship continues drifting. Its sails full but not straining. The air is thick with the scent of sea salt and something sweeter, fig leaves. Maybe. Or cedar smoke. Or the ghost of wine long since spilled. And then, voices. Not loud, not harsh, but strange and soft, coming from just off the port side. At first, Achios thinks it's just the wind. He squints into the dark, hands still on the tiller. But as the ship coasts forward, he sees them, figures, dozens of them, maybe more, waiting in the shallows, standing on rocky outcrops, emerging from thickets of mist. All female, all watching. They are dressed in layers of draped cloth, loose and flowing, their hair tangled with ivy and moonlight. Some carry tambourines, others, flutes. A few have faces painted in wild, joyful patterns. They are the Maenads, and they are here for him. Now here's your historical anchor. The Maenads were followers of Dionysus. Often depicted as wild, frenzied women who roamed forests and mountains in ritual ecstasy. Some accounts painted them as dangerous, capable of tearing wild animals limb from limb. Others described them dancing barefoot in snow, impervious to cold or pain. They were chaos wrapped in beauty, a manifestation of surrender to divine impulse. And now, they've gathered along the shores of Naxos, waiting for their god to return. Dionysus, still half reclined, opens one eye. He sees them, and smiles. They always find me, he murmurs. The tiger lifts its head lazily, ears twitching. Achios does not smile. In fact, he looks distinctly unsettled. Do we stop? Eventually, Dionysus replies, let them approach. The ship glides on, closer now to shore. The Maenads remain silent, their eyes reflecting light that doesn't seem to come from anywhere. It's not a threatening silence. It's more like a dream. Paused mid-breath, one of them raises a hand. Dionysus sits up, stretches, and says, I suppose I should go say hello. Achios does not answer. He is doing his best to maintain composure while divine forest spirits prepare a beach party for a god. You, still stretched on the sand further down the beach, can see them too now. Like shadows with rhythm, like wind that dances. A soft drumming begins, not from the ship, not from the shore, somewhere in between. It pulses gently, like a heartbeat made of wood and leather. Then another sound joins it, the crisp rattle of a tambourine. The Maenads begin to move. Not wildly, not yet. Just slow swaying, arms lifting, feet padding through sand like leaves blown in lazy spirals. Their hair moves though there's no wind. Their laughter is faint, like a memory of laughter. Not quite there, but enough to raise the hair on your arms. Now here's a fringe detail the academics like to argue over. Were the Maenads real? Some say yes, that there were actual women who participated in Dionysian rites involving dance, music, and altered states of consciousness. Others say the stories were metaphorical, cautionary tales about letting go too much, about what happens when decorum breaks. Some even think the Maenads were used as political tools, symbols of both female empowerment and the need to suppress it. Whatever the case, these Maenads are definitely here, definitely watching. Dionysus rises slowly, as if he's waited centuries for this exact moment to reoccur again. He smooths his robe. The tiger yawns and follows. As the ship eases into shallow water, the Maenads part like a tide, creating a gentle path up the shore. Not a red carpet, more like a woven trail of petals and footprints. Dionysus doesn't disembark immediately. He turns to Achios first. You've done well, he says. You steered through madness, held your course. Achios nods once. Will I see you again? The god pauses. Only when you're not looking for me. And with that, he hops lightly off the boat. Barefoot as always, into the soft sand. The Maenads erupt into a ripple of movement. They don't crowd him, they orbit, they dance. One begins to sing a melody with no words. Just notes that loop in a spiral. Like water circling a drain in reverse. Dionysus lets them swirl around him as he walks. completely at ease in the madness he inspires. And the ship? It just drifts, anchorless but content, like it knows its job is done. You close your eyes again. The music washing over you like soft rain. There's no fear in it, no urgency, only rhythm, only myth. The sand shifts beneath your shoulder blades as you exhale, sinking deeper into that strange place between sleep and story. The laughter of the Maenads dances along the shoreline like wind-tossed petals, never too loud, never harsh, just enough to remind you that somewhere, very close, the gods are still awake. Dionysus walks at the center of it all, the Maenads gliding around him in wide arcs. Their feet barely seem to touch the earth. Their hands move in patterns you don't recognize, rituals of joy, of mischief, of devotion. One lifts a branch crowned with ivy and thyrsus leaves. Another weaves strands of grapevine into her companion's hair. And through it all, Dionysus moves with the ease of someone returning home. You sit up a little, brushing the sand from your forearms. From this distance, the god's robe seems to shimmer, purple with hints of deep red. The color of overripe figs and stained lips. The Maenads offer him flowers, fruit, flutes. He accepts none of it and yet refuses nothing. His presence is enough. He is the festival. Back aboard the ship, Achios stands quietly at the helm. The sails are down. The anchor, if there ever was one, rests somewhere below. He doesn't call out, doesn't follow. He knows this isn't his part of the story anymore. And Dionysus knows it too. But before the god fully disappears into the twining arms of the Maenads, he pauses. He turns back to the ship. Or maybe just to Achios. He lifts a hand, not a wave. More like a blessing. A gesture so small you almost miss it. Achios bows his head slightly. And then the god is gone. Swallowed by the soft dance of fabric and bare feet and laughter. Let's pause for a moment and talk about why Achios didn't jump like the others. Mythology loves its exceptions. For every greedy king turned into stone, there's a kind farmer who gets a talking olive tree. For every arrogant braggart punished by the gods, there's one quiet mortal who simply listens and survives. In most versions of this story, Achios is unnamed. Sometimes he's just the helmsman. But his role remains constant. He doubts the crew, warns them not to kidnap the stranger, and is spared. That's it. No speeches, no sword fights, just reason and decency in a world that usually rewards drama. Historians still debate whether he was meant to represent logic, piety, or just the rare voice of common sense in a story built on chaos. But his calm, his loyalty, those are the qualities that Dionysus respects. Even gods have preferences. You glance back toward the sea. The dolphins are still there. Not all of them, just a few, gliding in lazy loops. Tails flicking, eyes bright under the moonlight. They don't seem to miss being human. Or maybe they do, but only in that quiet, dreamlike way you miss old songs, not as pain, but as something softened by distance. One of them leaps, arcs high, and lands with barely a splash. A Maenad laughs at the sound, tossing a piece of fruit into the water. The dolphin catches it, no teeth, just a smooth slip of motion, like delight in physical form. And you? You close your eyes again. But not for long, because footsteps crunch in the sand near you. Slow, steady, barefoot. You open one eye. It's Dionysus. Not surrounded by dancers, not glowing with vines or wine. Just himself, quiet and watchful, looking out at the sea beside you. He says nothing for a moment, just stands there. Then, almost conversationally, "I like this part." After the noise, before the forgetting, you nod. It seems like the right response. "I didn't always make dolphins," he adds, sitting down beside you like an old friend. "Once, I tried turning a group of sailors into wind. They blew inland and never came back." He chuckles. "They were very bad sailors." You smile. And the tiger? Still deciding what it wants to be next. From the distance, you hear another tambourine jingle. But softer now. Less celebration. More lullaby. He lies back in the sand beside you. Eyes on the stars. "You know," he murmurs. "Most people think I'm about excess. Indulgence. Madness." He pauses. "But really, I'm about release." You don't ask what he means. You just watch the stars with him. One blinks out. Another takes its place. The waves pull closer. Then retreat. The Maenads' dancing slows. And Achios, still aboard the ship, finally steps away from the tiller. He walks to the railing, looks out at the island, and, after a long, slow breath, lowers a ladder. He'll stay for a while, maybe longer. You and Dionysus lie there in companionable silence, the kind that doesn't need filling. Here's a lesser-known tidbit. In some French accounts, Dionysus doesn't just turn pirates into dolphins. He follows them for years, watching, visiting, whispering dreams into their sleep. He never punishes them again, never asks for penance, just makes sure they're alright. Even gods, it turns out, can feel responsible for the things they transform. The waves hush, the stars settle, the god beside you closes his eyes. And so do you. Somewhere between breath and tide, you drift deeper. The sand beneath you cradles your shape perfectly now. As if molded by myth, the sea murmurs in your ear. And the presence beside you, calm, ancient, barefoot, shifts slightly but says nothing more. Dionysus lies so still. You wonder if he's already part of the sky again. The stars blink above like old gods watching younger gods perform. Down the beach, the Maenads have quieted. The tambourines rest at their sides. Their dance has become swaying. Their eyes are half closed. Even the tiger, stretched out in the moonlight, purrs in a low, thunderous rhythm, gentler than expected, as if it too has grown drowsy under the spell of the moment. But the sea still remembers. And the dolphins keep circling. Let's take a brief paddle through mythology again. Dionysus, in every telling, is a god of contradiction. He is wildness and wisdom, ecstasy and patience, performer and punisher. His parties end in revelations or regrettable tattoos. He has no temples in the traditional sense. Instead, he has forests, hillsides, hidden glades. His followers wear masks not to hide, but to reveal something truer than a face. And his stories? Always strange, always winding, never quite settling where you expect. Take, for example, this cruise with pirates. Most Greek gods, when insulted, respond with thunderbolts or curses or something involving eternal torment and livestock. But Dionysus? He gives his captors the chance to become something better, something freer. Dolphins. Because what's more free than a creature of the sea that never has to row, never pays taxes, and gets to leap for joy every few minutes? Still, not everyone agrees. There's a peculiar camp of scholars, mostly the kind who have very strong opinions about the behavior of frogs, who argue that Dionysus didn't want to turn them into dolphins, that he was surprised by it, that the sea did it, not him, that the whole thing was a lesson to him about compassion and restraint. Dionysus, if he heard that theory, would probably laugh for 10 minutes and then pour a libation on the nearest scholar's sandals. Because here's what's true. He knew exactly what he was doing. Back on the ship, Achios finally climbs down the rope ladder and steps onto the shore. No Maenads run to greet him. No music plays. He walks quietly, respectfully, like a man stepping into someone else's dream. He looks at you, then at Dionysus. The god opens one eye. There's food, if you're hungry, he says. Achios glances at the tiger. I'll wait, he says. You smile into the darkness. You like Achios. The god sits up now, brushing sand from his robes. He rises and walks to a small circle of Maenads who've begun to build a fire, not with wood, but with vines and branches that seem to sprout right from the earth beneath them. The flames glow green and gold. No smoke, just light and the smell of crushed mint and cedar. You decide it's okay to follow. So you do. Every step feels heavy, but in a good way. Like gravity has remembered you, but forgiven you. Dionysus gestures for you to sit beside him, and a Maenad offers you something in a clay cup. It tastes like honey, and time, and something older than both. The fire crackles. No one speaks for a long while, because there's nothing to say that hasn't already been sung in dance or whispered by the tide. Here's another odd footnote in the scholarship. There are versions of this tale where Dionysus doesn't leave Naxos. He builds a tiny stone theater. He teaches shepherds how to make masks. He plays the flute under fig trees and leaves wine in hollow logs. In these stories, he becomes less a god and more a local, like someone who just stayed. Historians argue about the meaning. Did he lose his way? Retire? Or was that the whole point, to become ordinary for a while? Dionysus, sitting by the fire, cups his hands around a flame and hums. He doesn't look like a god right now. He looks like someone who's told this story 1,000 times, and still enjoys the ending. You lean back. Achios sits across from you, cross-legged, hands resting on his knees. The tiger curls beside him, tail twitching in time with the flicker of the fire. A dolphin's splash echoes in the distance. It's easy to imagine the world always looked like this. That maybe, once upon a time, it did. The god watches the fire. The flames reflect in his eyes. And for the briefest moment, you understand everything. Then it's gone. But the feeling remains. Like the trace of music after the instrument is packed away. Like footsteps you can't hear but still believe in. The fire crackles softly, sending tiny sparks into the night air, where they rise and vanish like thoughts you meant to follow but didn't. Around the flames, the group has gone quiet, not out of fear or awkwardness, but that special quiet that happens when people are full of stories, of warmth, of something sacred. Dionysus sits with one leg folded under him, the other stretched toward the fire. He's humming again, no melody you recognize, but it sounds familiar in the way old lullabies do. The maenads sway slightly in place, not dancing now, just breathing in rhythm. You sip again from the clay cup in your hands. The drink has changed. It tastes like pomegranates now, and something you can't quite name, like sunlight on stone, or the memory of a dream you had when you were 5. Dionysus leans back on his hands and looks at the sky. Funny thing about stars, he says, they're old, but they always look brand new. Achios, seated across the circle, raises an eyebrow. You mean like you? The god grins. Flattery gets you a longer lifespan. One of the maenads snorts with laughter. A few others giggle. Someone claps once, without reason. Let's take a wander through an often ignored thread of this myth. The cults. The cult of Dionysus wasn't just dancing and grapes. It was one of the few religious spaces in the ancient world where boundaries blurred. Men and women worshipped together. The poor danced with the rich. Outsiders, wanderers, and foreigners were welcomed. Sometimes even actors and philosophers showed up, though it's unclear if they were there for enlightenment or just the free wine. Historians still debate whether the rituals were dangerous or deeply healing. Were the ecstatic rites a release from social pressure? Or a form of collective madness? Were they empowering or escapist? What's certain is that followers often returned from ceremonies changed, calmer, more open, more fluid. Dionysus shifts beside you. People always assume madness is wild, he says, pulling a vine from his hair. But sometimes it's soft, like fog, or music you can't stop humming. He tosses the vine into the fire. It flares purple for half a second, then resumes its usual golden flicker. A breeze slips in from the sea, stirring the coals. The maenads begin to hum, low and gentle. A chord that wobbles like a tired candle flame. It isn't a song so much as a spell. Not one you need to believe in, just one that works anyway. Dionysus closes his eyes. The tiger sighs. Achios leans back on his elbows and looks toward the moon, which is now tilted at an angle that makes it look tipsy. Fitting. Then he asks a question no one saw coming. Why do you travel alone? Dionysus doesn't answer right away. Instead, he opens his eyes, stares into the fire, and says, because I don't trust myself not to love everyone. You're not sure whether it's a joke or the truest thing he's ever said. He looks at you then. And you? Why do you listen? You blink. The question settles heavily in your chest. You think about it. Maybe it's because the world is too noisy. Maybe it's because stories feel safer than reality. Maybe it's because something in you wants to believe that dolphins remember being men, and pirates can be forgiven, and gods don't always sit on thrones. You open your mouth, but no words come out. He nods, as if that was the answer he expected. And for the first time, you realize something simple but profound. Dionysus doesn't demand faith. He offers space, to laugh, to fall apart, to lose control, to reassemble yourself without shame. Here's a little-known version of this myth, in one telling. Dionysus turns the pirates into dolphins before they even reach the sea. The ship transforms, the crew panics, and one by one they jump, only to find they've already changed midair. There's no punishment, no speech, just inevitability. That version's been largely forgotten. Too gentle, perhaps, too forgiving. The fire pops loudly, scattering your thoughts. A maenad offers you a fig. You take it. It's perfectly ripe, sweet, dense, with a hint of something wild. like it grew somewhere that doesn't exist on any map. And suddenly, you feel it. A soft pull in your chest, like a thread being tugged gently towards sleep. Dionysus notices. He leans close and whispers, "You don't have to stay for the ending. The story will remember you." You nod, eyes heavy. The dolphins call from the bay, short, lyrical bursts that echo across the waves. The god smiles. "They still sing," he says, "even now, especially now." And then he reclines again, arms folded behind his head. As the Maenads resume their hum and the fire flickers low, you rest your head on your arm. The fig still lingers on your tongue. The stars spin slightly overhead. And in this moment, this quiet, sacred, slightly ridiculous moment, you feel at peace. The fire burns lower now, casting long, slow shadows on the sand. Everything around you feels dipped in honey and smoke, warm, soft, and just slightly sticky with magic. The Maenads continue their gentle humming, some now lying in tangled heaps of cloth and limbs, exhausted not from effort but from contentment. Their eyes flutter closed in rhythm with the night. Dionysus hasn't moved in a while. His eyes are open, but they seem to be watching a place far beyond the shoreline. Maybe he's seeing a memory, or a future, or both, folded together like grape leaves in spring. Achios is still awake too, tracing small circles in the sand with his finger. He's not trying to think, he's just letting the moment hold him. Like everyone else here, he's learned that silence is welcome in the company of this particular god. And now, at long last, you understand something that's been slowly threading itself through this story. This was never a warning, not a lesson. It's a dream, a myth shaped like a spiral. Not a line, not about right and wrong, but about rhythm, about change, about the joy and risk of letting go. Let's talk about what historians call interpretive drift. That's when a myth slowly transforms over time, like a ship repaired plank by plank. The parts stay familiar, pirates, gods, dolphins, but the meaning shifts. One generation sees a tale of divine justice. Another, a story about transformation. Another sees humor, or loneliness, or freedom. And this one? This one is about softness. Dionysus has always been an outlier in the pantheon. Where other gods are static, symbols of law, war, reason, he moves. He flows. He lets things get messy. He encourages masks not to hide truth, but to reveal different ones. To try on selves like costumes, and see which one dances best. Some fringe scholars argue that Dionysus wasn't originally a Greek god at all. That he was imported, reshaped, layered with local color until no one remembered where he came from. That his foreignness was the point, a deity who disrupts, not with fire or conquest, but with wine, with music, with the unbearable lightness of joy. He doesn't build empires. He throws parties in the ruins. And maybe, just maybe, he lets pirates become dolphins because deep down, he believes nobody is beyond saving. A few of the Maenads have begun weaving things from nearby vines, crowns, loops, strange little figures that might be dolls or talismans or just quiet crafts to pass the time. One offers you a ring of ivy. You don't say anything, you just take it and slide it onto your wrist, where it curls gently, warm and cool at once. The night deepens, and still the sea swells gently, its breathing matching your own. Dionysus speaks again, barely louder than the tide. Sometimes, he says, people get stuck in one shape too long. It makes them brittle. He doesn't elaborate, doesn't need to. You think of the pirates. The way they leapt, not out of terror but something closer to surrender. How they didn't scream. How they became something light, and fast, and joyfully wet. How they swam away, laughing. Achios finally speaks again, softly. Do they ever return? Dionysus looks over. Would you? Achios doesn't answer. You suspect the dolphins wouldn't either. Because what would they return to? Greed? Shame? Salted meat and splinters? Better to forget. Better to swim. The god looks at you now. You're thinking too much, he says. You blink. That's kind of what I do. Well, he says, maybe tonight you do something else. He stands, stretches, and begins walking toward the surf. The Maenads don't follow. They just watch. The tiger gets up slowly, pads after him. Its massive paws leave no prints. The god steps into the water. Not deeply, just ankle high. He lets the waves lap at his feet. You sit up. He doesn't look back, but he speaks. One last time before slipping back into whatever space gods go when they've finished their wine. Don't worry, he says. The story's not over. It's just changing shape. And with that, he disappears into the dark, into the tide, into the mist, into the folds of sleep and seafoam. The fire burns low. The ivy crown on your wrist tightens once. Gently, like it heard everything and approves. Achios leans back and closes his eyes. A dolphin leaps. And somewhere, faintly, a flute plays 3 slow notes. The fire's nearly out now. It flickers in soft gusts. Flames slumping lower and lower as if even they are ready to doze. The coals pulse like slow, glowing hearts. Around them, the Maenads sleep, arms draped over one another. Cloaks tangled in piles, feet bare and dusty. Their faces are peaceful, open, a few smile in their sleep. You lie back, watching the stars blur slightly. And you wonder, was it real? Dionysus, the vines, the dolphins, the transformation, did it all actually happen? Or was this one of those myths the night invents just to comfort you? That's when you hear it. A voice, not Dionysus's, but familiar, drier, slightly nasal. A scholar's voice, not a god's. Some say it was a warning tale. It begins, almost smugly, a cautionary yarn passed down by sailors too drunk to remember proper theology. You blink. Where's this voice coming from? It continues. The god punished their greed. Yes, but also their ignorance. To seize divinity with rough hands is to drown in consequence. You roll onto your side. It's Achios, still awake, still sitting, apparently monologuing to the stars. He clears his throat. Others say it was an initiation story. A metaphor, that the pirates were never pirates, but ordinary men given a taste of something beyond comprehension. That Dionysus didn't change them, just revealed what was already inside. You smile. He's been thinking about this. And then, he adds, there are those who think the whole thing was made up by fishermen who wanted an excuse for why dolphins kept stealing their nets. You laugh, softly. He glances over. What do you think? You take a breath, feeling the cool air fill your lungs. I think he wanted to be found. Achios nods slowly. So do most gods. They just hide better. Let's drift into another scholarly squabble, because academics love to argue over the tone of this myth. Is it comedy, tragedy, farce, a spiritual allegory with marine mammals? There's no consensus. The earliest surviving versions treat it as almost slapstick, foolish men trying to bind a being far above their understanding, only to be undone by their own assumptions. Later versions get darker. The transformation becomes a punishment, even a curse. The joy fades. But then there are fringe sources, the scrolls in backrooms. The fragments no one cites, where the dolphins are grateful, where they return in dreams, where they leap beside boats not to warn or mock, but to accompany, guardians of sailors who once made bad choices and were given better ones. And honestly, that version feels right tonight. The sea sighs. The tide creeps closer to your feet. Achios speaks again, quieter now. When I first took the tiller, I thought I was guiding something. He pauses. Now I think the boat just needed a witness. You don't respond, not because you disagree, but because silence is sometimes the most respectful answer. He stretches out beside the fading fire. The Maenads remain asleep, their breaths deep and even. The tiger is gone, melted back into myth, or maybe just enjoying a solo beach stroll. Somewhere offshore, a dolphin sings, just one clear note, like a farewell, or maybe a reminder. Here's a lesser-known version of the story, rare, half-faded, and passed down through word of mouth in a fishing village where no one reads scrolls. In it, the pirates realize who Dionysus is before they reach the sea. They kneel, they weep, they untie him and ask forgiveness. And Dionysus forgives them, but he turns them into dolphins anyway. Because forgiveness isn't about undoing the mistake. It's about transforming what comes after. And in this version, the pirates thank him as they leap. That's the thing about Dionysus. His myths rarely end with answers. They end with change, not justice, not revenge, but movement, like music that never resolves. You sit up slightly, brushing sand from your arms, and look out to sea. The stars are clearer now, closer. The sea stretches endlessly, patient and glittering, the kind of sea you could fall into and never need to come back. But for now, you stay here, by the dying fire, with the sleeping Maenads, and the helmsman who knows that sometimes the story isn't about steering at all. It's about surrender. The fire's nearly out now. It flickers in soft gusts. Flames slumping lower and lower as if even they are ready to doze. The coals pulse like slow, glowing hearts. Around them, the Maenads sleep, arms draped over one another. Cloaks tangled in piles, feet bare and dusty. Their faces are peaceful, open, a few smile in their sleep. You lie back, watching the stars blur slightly. And you wonder, was it real? Dionysus, the vines, the dolphins, the transformation, did it all actually happen? Or was this one of those myths the night invents just to comfort you? That's when you hear it. A voice, not Dionysus's, but familiar, drier, slightly nasal. A scholar's voice, not a god's. Some say it was a warning tale. It begins, almost smugly, a cautionary yarn passed down by sailors too drunk to remember proper theology. You blink. Where's this voice coming from? It continues. The god punished their greed. Yes, but also their ignorance. To seize divinity with rough hands is to drown in consequence. You roll onto your side. It's Achios, still awake, still sitting, apparently monologuing to the stars. He clears his throat. Others say it was an initiation story. A metaphor, that the pirates were never pirates, but ordinary men given a taste of something beyond comprehension. That Dionysus didn't change them, just revealed what was already inside. You smile. He's been thinking about this. And then, he adds, there are those who think the whole thing was made up by fishermen who wanted an excuse for why dolphins kept stealing their nets. You laugh, softly. He glances over. What do you think? You take a breath, feeling the cool air fill your lungs. I think he wanted to be found. Achios nods slowly. So do most gods. They just hide better. Let's drift into another scholarly squabble, because academics love to argue over the tone of this myth. Is it comedy, tragedy, farce, a spiritual allegory with marine mammals? There's no consensus. The earliest surviving versions treat it as almost slapstick, foolish men trying to bind a being far above their understanding, only to be undone by their own assumptions. Later versions get darker. The transformation becomes a punishment, even a curse. The joy fades. But then there are fringe sources, the scrolls in backrooms. The fragments no one cites, where the dolphins are grateful, where they return in dreams, where they leap beside boats not to warn or mock, but to accompany, guardians of sailors who once made bad choices and were given better ones. And honestly, that version feels right tonight. The sea sighs. The tide creeps closer to your feet. Achios speaks again, quieter now. When I first took the tiller, I thought I was guiding something. He pauses. Now I think the boat just needed a witness. You don't respond, not because you disagree, but because silence is sometimes the most respectful answer. He stretches out beside the fading fire. The Maenads remain asleep, their breaths deep and even. The tiger is gone, melted back into myth, or maybe just enjoying a solo beach stroll. Somewhere offshore, a dolphin sings, just one clear note, like a farewell, or maybe a reminder. Here's a lesser-known version of the story, rare, half-faded, and passed down through word of mouth in a fishing village where no one reads scrolls. In it, the pirates realize who Dionysus is before they reach the sea. They kneel, they weep, they untie him and ask forgiveness. And Dionysus forgives them, but he turns them into dolphins anyway. Because forgiveness isn't about undoing the mistake. It's about transforming what comes after. And in this version, the pirates thank him as they leap. That's the thing about Dionysus. His myths rarely end with answers. They end with change, not justice, not revenge, but movement, like music that never resolves. You sit up slightly, brushing sand from your arms, and look out to sea. The stars are clearer now, closer. The sea stretches endlessly, patient and glittering, the kind of sea you could fall into and never need to come back. But for now, you stay here, by the dying fire, with the sleeping Maenads, and the helmsman who knows that sometimes the story isn't about steering at all. It's about surrender. The fire's nearly out now. It flickers in soft gusts. Flames slumping lower and lower as if even they are ready to doze. The coals pulse like slow, glowing hearts. Around them, the Maenads sleep, arms draped over one another. Cloaks tangled in piles. feet bare and dusty. Their faces are peaceful, open, a few smile in their sleep. You lie back, watching the stars blur slightly. And you wonder, was it real? Dionysus, the vines, the dolphins, the transformation, did it all actually happen? Or was this one of those myths the night invents just to comfort you? That's when you hear it. A voice, not Dionysus's, but familiar, drier, slightly nasal. A scholar's voice, not a god's. Some say it was a warning tale. It begins, almost smugly, a cautionary yarn passed down by sailors too drunk to remember proper theology. You blink. Where's this voice coming from? It continues. The god punished their greed. Yes, but also their ignorance. To seize divinity with rough hands is to drown in consequence. You roll onto your side. It's Achios, still awake, still sitting, apparently monologuing to the stars. He clears his throat. Others say it was an initiation story. A metaphor, that the pirates were never pirates, but ordinary men given a taste of something beyond comprehension. That Dionysus didn't change them, just revealed what was already inside. You smile. He's been thinking about this. And then, he adds, there are those who think the whole thing was made up by fishermen who wanted an excuse for why dolphins kept stealing their nets. You laugh, softly. He glances over. What do you think? You take a breath, feeling the cool air fill your lungs. I think he wanted to be found. Achios nods slowly. So do most gods. They just hide better. Let's drift into another scholarly squabble, because academics love to argue over the tone of this myth. Is it comedy, tragedy, farce, a spiritual allegory with marine mammals? There's no consensus. The earliest surviving versions treat it as almost slapstick, foolish men trying to bind a being far above their understanding, only to be undone by their own assumptions. Later versions get darker. The transformation becomes a punishment, even a curse. The joy fades. But then there are fringe sources, the scrolls in backrooms. The fragments no one cites, where the dolphins are grateful, where they return in dreams, where they leap beside boats not to warn or mock, but to accompany, guardians of sailors who once made bad choices and were given better ones. And honestly, that version feels right tonight. The sea sighs. The tide creeps closer to your feet. Achios speaks again, quieter now. When I first took the tiller, I thought I was guiding something. He pauses. Now I think the boat just needed a witness. You don't respond, not because you disagree, but because silence is sometimes the most respectful answer. He stretches out beside the fading fire. The Maenads remain asleep, their breaths deep and even. The tiger is gone, melted back into myth, or maybe just enjoying a solo beach stroll. Somewhere offshore, a dolphin sings, just one clear note, like a farewell, or maybe a reminder. Here's a lesser-known version of the story, rare, half-faded, and passed down through word of mouth in a fishing village where no one reads scrolls. In it, the pirates realize who Dionysus is before they reach the sea. They kneel, they weep, they untie him and ask forgiveness. And Dionysus forgives them, but he turns them into dolphins anyway. Because forgiveness isn't about undoing the mistake. It's about transforming what comes after. And in this version, the pirates thank him as they leap. That's the thing about Dionysus. His myths rarely end with answers. They end with change, not justice, not revenge, but movement, like music that never resolves. You sit up slightly, brushing sand from your arms, and look out to sea. The stars are clearer now, closer. The sea stretches endlessly, patient and glittering, the kind of sea you could fall into and never need to come back. But for now, you stay here, by the dying fire, with the sleeping Maenads, and the helmsman who knows that sometimes, the story isn't about steering at all. It's about surrender. The night has folded in fully now. No more horizon, just sky blending into sea, into thought, into whatever soft edge holds the boundary between myth and sleep. You lie still. Everyone does. Even the tide is quieter now. Content to breathe in shallow, silken waves. The Maenads no longer stir. They've become part of the landscape, ivy and hair and skin woven into the beach like the story itself has put them gently away. Achios hasn't moved, not even an inch. One of the Maenads has tucked a vine under his arm like a blanket. Or maybe a thank you. And you, though your body hasn't shifted, feel change. Inside, loosened, like a knot you didn't know you were carrying just slipped free. There is no sign of Dionysus. But there doesn't need to be. Because he's not a grand exit kind of god. No thunderclaps, no glowing ascension, just vanishing with the music. When no one is looking. Like a note that echoes longer than the song. Let's linger a little longer. Because endings like this deserve a moment of quiet reverence. Here's one last historical morsel. There are fragments, tiny, barely there texts, carved into stones in forgotten temples. On them, people left offerings not to Dionysus, but from Dionysus. Little prayers he was said to whisper in dreams. Let the mask fall, let the wine spill, let the sea teach you your name again. No one knows if they're real. No one knows if it matters. Because the myth survives not in temples, but in you. In the places where you surrender control. In the laughter you can't explain. In the strange urge to dance in your kitchen at 2 a.m. just because the moon feels slightly closer than usual. Dionysus is there. In the release. In the moment after you stop pretending. But before you start explaining. And yes, even in the Dolphins. Especially in the Dolphins. You roll onto your back one final time. The stars above are thick now. A quilt of quiet fire. Somewhere in that scatter of light, there's a place where vines grow along mast poles. Where ropes won't hold. Where pirates leap with laughter. And gods leave barefoot prints on the decks of ships. You close your eyes. Not because the story is over. But because now, it belongs to the sea. Wind down, 300 words. The waves are slower now. Drawn out like breath. Each one pulls just a little farther from the shore before returning in a hush. The fire behind your eyes is out. But its warmth lingers, not heat. But presence, like hands that held yours. Then let go gently. The beach is quiet. You're wrapped in a kind of stillness that only comes when you stop chasing the end of things. When the questions fade. When your body remembers it knows how to rest. The sand supports you, perfectly shaped to your weight. You no longer notice the curve of your back. The ache in your shoulder. The drift of your thoughts. Everything is slow now. Everything is soft. And somewhere beyond the edge of hearing, a flute plays one last note. It lingers in the air like a ribbon, curling in the breeze, until it, too, fades. No gods remain, no pirates, no stories that need telling. Only you, breathing, floating, safe. You're allowed to sleep now. You don't need to remember everything. The myth will remember you. And when the morning comes, it won't matter whether the dolphins were real, or whether the vines ever bloomed, or whether gods still walk barefoot on beaches. What matters is this. You listened. You followed. And now, gently, you let go. The sea will hold the rest. Good night.